One moment, you're drinking coffee at the station. And the next, you're staring at a burning house, making split-second decisions. Decisions that carry the weight of life and death.
It's like you sit around the station waiting for somebody's worst day of their life, and then you're just like plunged into just absolute chaos and insanity.
For 25 years, Christy Warren was a firefighter and paramedic. Her world was adrenaline, urgency, and solving impossible problems under pressure.
When we're just plunged into that, it's they talk about like being in the flow state or whatever. It's like bliss. I mean, the high from it afterwards is just tremendous.
But every rush has its cost. Behind the calls, the rescues, and the adrenaline highs, there were moments that Christy just couldn't leave behind.
I mean, we saw horrible, horrible, horrible things. And I went to put this guy in that box, and there was no more room. Like, that box had been full. Like, it kind of like box pressurized and blew up all over everything. And that's really where I started to struggle.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Ordinary Monday. Thank you so much for joining us. I am your host, Chris Barron, and each week I sit down with a guest whose job is far from ordinary. We explore how they got there, what it's really like behind the scenes, and then I ask them to relive the single most unforgettable experience of their career. Now, if you're enjoying the show, make sure to follow or subscribe. That way you won't miss out on any of the incredible guests we have lined up for you. Just a very quick note before we begin, this week's episode does contain descriptions of traumatic events, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, and mental health struggles that some listeners may find distressing, so please take care while listening. My guest today has spent more than 2 decades on the front lines of chaos. As a firefighter and paramedic in California, Christy Warren raced into burning buildings, cut crash victims free of mangled cars, and carried people through the worst days of their lives. But the job that gave her adrenaline and purpose also took a toll. After years of service, she was forced to confront the hidden cost that many first responders experience, PTSD. And her journey through breaking, healing, and recovery is as powerful as any rescue she's ever made. And as you heard in that opening, her big story takes us back inside the scene of a traumatic fire, where the weight of a single call finally tipped the balance and changed her life forever. So sit back as we explore what it takes to build a career in fire and rescue, and what it means to come out the other side. You're listening to No Ordinary Monday. Let's get into the show. Christy Warren, how you doing?
Chris Barron, I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm super honored. I'm doing really well.
Nice.
Thanks.
I guess things are a lot calmer now than maybe they were 10 or 15 years ago on a morning like this.
Yes, things are much calmer now. Almost to the point where I struggle with boredom and missing the craziness that ensued.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we should probably just go back and just explain. What's the best way that you would describe the career that you had for, like 30 years or whatever it was? How you best describe it?
It was 25 years. It was incredible boredom pierced by like moments of insanity. It's kind of funny because, when you think about it, we basically, as a firefighter, it's like you sit around the station waiting for somebody's house to catch on fire, or waiting for, somebody to get hit by a car, or waiting for, just somebody else's like worst day of their life. And so it can be tremendously boring at times. And then it can just be, you're just like plunged into just absolute chaos and insanity. And, but it was the best job in the world. I just can't even begin to describe what a great job it was and how much I enjoyed it. And, going on calls, especially like critical ones, it just like you find this clarity, or I found this clarity that I can't seem to find in anything else that I've done. they talk about like being in the flow state or whatever, and it's like that's where, at least for me, and I think a lot of us first responders, like that's where we do our best and we're at our best. Like none of us are good planners. I think pretty much all of us have ADHD, and when we're just plunged into that, it's like bliss. I mean, it's the high from it afterwards is just tremendous. I mean, we saw horrible, horrible, horrible things, but the call itself was it was just tremendously gratifying.
It's such a paradoxical like job to do. Of all the jobs you can do, like you say, you're seeing people on the worst day of their lives often, but like I guess that if you have a call that you do save someone's life or you do save someone on the worst day of their life, you come out of it feeling, I mean, would you describe it as euphoric or what is that sort of feeling?
It's kind of interesting when you talk about like saving somebody's life. It's like it doesn't happen very often where you like save somebody's life like right in front of you. And I think it's really, it's more about like getting the job done than like looking at it as saving their life, if that makes any sense. Because I think if you really look at it as somebody's life in your hand, like at the moment, then it'd be just too hard. You know what I mean? It'd be really overwhelming. So it's really about the job. Yeah, it's about getting a car door open or getting the roof of the car cut off so we can get the person out. So it's really about our task and doing our tasks really well.
It's interesting just the way that, you frame that in your head, and maybe you and your colleagues think about it the same way. It's like, I just solved a problem. I just did this thing and I just went to the next thing. It's a fascinating mindset.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. But I guess
it's about solving a problem. Like you hit the nail on the head. Like we have to solve these problems very quickly and with very little information too. If I pull up on a fire and I'm first in and I'm the captain and it's like I have to make all these decisions on how we're going to attack this fire, where I'm going to get my water from, all this kind of stuff. And just by pulling up in front of the house and looking at it, I have like 10 seconds to make an assessment and then make a flurry of decisions that could mean life or death at the time. I don't think about it at that time. I just think about like, okay, like you say, the task and solving the problem. And so, so it's kind of like, I think that's kind of where the rush comes from, is having to do a lot of things that are very high stakes with very little information and in a very short amount of time.
I mean, let's just go back. I mean, I'd love to sort of just give listeners like a bit of a snapshot of like your career to an extent. It's kind of split into sort of two main first responder categories, isn't it? And just walk us through that.
Yeah. So I originally wanted to be a doctor, and I thought it'd be fun for a summer to like get a job on an ambulance, and you know what I mean? Like I've always was like the person who like saw an ambulance go by or a fire engine go by and was just like mesmerized. And I watched the show called Emergency, which was a pretty big show in the 70s, and it was about two firefighter paramedics, and it was just like my favorite show in the world. And it's like I always in the back of my head, I always wanted to be a firefighter, but at the time I never saw a woman firefighter, so I never thought it was like that possible that I could do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I got a job on the ambulance, and I worked in this city called Vallejo, which is a pretty violent city. And so we were very, very busy on lots and lots of trauma. We had lots of freeways and highways, too, that intersect through the city. And so
oh, wow.
I had the time of my life. Like, I was good at it. I loved it. And so I said, forget being a doctor. Like, I want to do this. And so I went to paramedic school and got my paramedic license. And so I worked in Vallejo as a paramedic for 7 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. And really had the time of my life. And then I saw that I kind of wanted something more. And I also really wanted to be a firefighter. Like I saw what they did and I really wanted to do that. I've always been athletic and play sports. And so like that whole physical part of that just really enticed me. So I started testing for fire departments, and so I first got hired at a small department in the Bay Area in California, and yeah, I was just smitten. And then I wanted to work for like a busier, kind of more inner city department, and that's when I got hired at Berkeley, California. And so then I was a paramedic firefighter for the rest of my career, and I had all the positions. I was, like I said, I was a paramedic there. I was a firefighter. I was a driver, so I drove the fire engine for several years, and then I promoted to captain. And so the captain makes all the decisions on the engine, and it's a lot of responsibility. And I'm not patting myself on the back in any shape or form, but the job itself, like I mean, you're the one that makes all those decisions under pressure, and you also have your crew's life at stake, and you have the citizens' lives at stake. So there's a lot on your back. But so yeah, so I did a total of 25 years working in pretty busy
Damn,
systems.
that's amazing. I also interviewed another paramedic in the show, and while the sort of life-saving aspect of it was like, an important part, it was like the adrenaline of the entire thing was the draw. It was like, it's exciting.
Yeah, when people ask, or like if you ask them like, why do you want to be a firefighter, and they say to help people, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's not why you became a firefighter. Like that's not it. There's a million ways to help people, to be of service of people, and so yeah, there's way more to it than that.
And what's it like? I mean, we always love going behind the scenes on jobs on this podcast, and what is it like behind the scenes? You kind of said at the beginning it was like, extreme boredom intersected with extreme chaos, but like, kind of break those two sides of the job down a little bit more and give us a look at that.
So yeah, we work 24 or 48 hour shifts, kind of depending on what department you work for. We usually have a little meeting with the crew about what's happening for the day. We might have training, or we might have to go do fire inspections, and we have to go shopping for lunch and for dinner, and so like you have kind of this like monotonous day planned out, whether it's training and, like I said, all those other things, but always in the back of your mind, like at any second, like you have to be ready to go. You have to be ready to drop everything and go, to insanity. And I read some study where they were doing testing cortisol levels in firefighters, and they found that even when they're sitting in their recliner watching a movie, eating ice cream, like at 9:00 at night, their cortisol levels were through the roof, because
Really,
it's like you're on. So even like if you work for a department, or you're at a station that's like relatively slow and you don't run a lot of calls, like your body is still just being hammered. Your nervous system is still being hammered, all the time. So, yeah. And then, you alluded to having fun. It's like, we absolutely, you have to have fun. And I think firefighters are some of the funniest people in the world. And, we do mild-mannered pranks on each other. We laugh a lot. We give each other a hard time. Like, you have to have some pretty thick skin to be a firefighter. And yeah, we give each other a ton of crap. Like if you let somebody know that you hate broccoli, it's like, guess what you're eating for dinner every single night. And whoever the chef of the night is, they're going to be making broccoli every single night. So just, it's just good fun, really, like good fun.
And I guess the other big thing with yourself is obviously you were going into, I mean, transitioning from being a paramedic, you were then moving into being a firefighter, and you were a woman moving into a heavily male-dominated. I mean, it's not just male-dominated in the sense of like, I don't know, at that time, like many careers were male-dominated, but this is like a sort of almost physically, it's almost like only men can do this job, because physiologically, how could a woman do it? And how did you navigate that? That must have been, you had to have so much determination to push through all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah, you really do. Like being a woman, it's like I had to work twice as hard to get like half the amount of respect. And, I really went into it with the attitude of like, I'm not going to tell anybody that I can do this job. I'm just going to show them I can do this job. I'm just going to do it and not talk about it. And I'm never going to say like, I demand your respect just because I'm a woman. It's just like, no, I'm just like everybody else. And, I never wanted to be treated any differently. And I also look from the fact that, like, a man's a trepidation with a woman, I'm 5'6", I'm 150 pounds, seeing me walk through the front door, their trepidation is I think legitimate. Like if I'm 6'2" and I'm 250 pounds and I go down in a fire, I'm going to say, is this short little lady going to be able to pull me out? But when it comes time to crawl through a window, like, I'm going to be the one that crawls through the window because they're not going to fit through the window. Like, I crawled in every attic there was to crawl through, or crawl space under a house. I was the one that was sent, I was the one that went through all the windows, all that kind of stuff. And so, it really takes all shapes and sizes, to do the job. And so, yeah, that's really the attitude that I went in there, and I felt like I think I earned every people's respect, and I was never treated poorly. I mean, I had people say, yeah, I don't think women belong here, but yeah, I was fortunate in that I was never treated poorly.
Yeah. I mean, you alluded to some of the sort of things that you had to do there, crawling through windows, and I'm sure in a fire, in a building on fire, you got lots of like debris falling, place to crawl through. I mean, what kind of, experiences can you recount that sort of stick out in your mind of you being, doing what people might visualize a firefighter doing?
Well, just to visualize it, like, we wear a lot of gear. It's a very hot and sweaty job, and the other thing too is, like, there's very little that we do that's ergonomically correct. Like, you like just lift, like, so when people are like having a major heart attack, like, one of the things that happens with their nervous system is like, they feel like they need to go to the bathroom. So a lot of times when you find patients who are having a big heart attack, you find them in the bathroom and they're really sweaty just because of their heart attack, and they tend to fall behind the toilet. Like, and so, like, picking up 300-pound person who is soaking wet and is falling between the wall and the toilet, like, there's no ergonomically way to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's just really physically demanding. And like, we have our chainsaws, like, come with warning labels, like, do not use this above your head, and don't use, and it's like, we use chainsaws all the time, and you know what I mean, in every manner possible, and above our head, and reaching really far, and standing on a pitched a roof on a 3-story building that's got a pretty good pitch to it, trying to cut open a roof. And so, yeah, it's pretty crazy what we do.
Yeah. I keep thinking of, like, all the, like, the occupational health and safety standards of, like, working in a factory and lifting, like, heavy loads, like, straight back and all that kind of stuff, which can never apply to the situations that you found yourself in. I'm sure you've got, like, colleagues and yourself probably with, like, all kinds of injuries, like, slip discs and stuff from, like, lifting people out, as you say, like, 300-pound people out of an awkward position. It must do all kinds of damage to your body.
It's I'm, like, speechless. It's unbelievably damaging to your body. Like, I had no idea that it was going to do. Like, my orthopedic surgeon calls me his annuity because I'm in there so much. And it's not just me. Like, I worked with a guy who he was amazing. He's like a physical specimen. He was so strong, like, naturally strong and well built. And he was a guy that I thought would never, and he ended up, like, starting having knee problems, hip problems and back problems. Like, and he had to retire out on it, not on a service retirement, but he had to retire out because of his injuries.
Wow.
Like, it's phenomenal what it does to your body. Like, I've had, I think, 9 orthopedic injuries or surgeries, and now I'm, like, my next one that's coming up is I have to have back surgery. And so yeah, I'm only 55 and I've had a shoulder replacement, and it takes a tremendous toll on your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, would you be able to take us through a couple of the, I guess, the tougher cases the tougher, would you call them call outs in the industry that you had?
We just call them calls. Some people
Yeah,
call them
calls.
call outs, but yeah, I call them calls. Um, yeah, like one particular call that when I got PTSD and I started having what they call I can't even say the word right now. Intrusive thoughts. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Where I have a videotape in my head that would play in like a loop of like bad calls that I've been on, and there's a call early in my career as a paramedic, and there was a house fire. It was during the day, and it was only a couple of blocks from the station I was at, and so the fire department was obviously dispatched first, and they got on scene first. We were on scene shortly behind them, and the system that I worked in, there's only one paramedic on the ambulance, and this is before, because we typically have paramedics on fire engines now too, but this is before any of that. So when we got on scene, I was the only I was the only paramedic on scene, and it was a 2-story house, and when we arrived on scene, there was flames, blowing out of all the windows in the second story, which means that it had flashed. And what that means is every single thing in the room catches on fire, like at the same time, like instantaneously.
Oh my
Everything
God.
reaches its ignition point. So everything in there is on fire. And so we got there. We found out there were 4 kids inside on the second story window, or that second story. So fire
Yeah.
department, went to work. One of the firefighters came out and said, I need you to come inside and look at something. And I'm like, okay. So the first floor is completely, clean and safe and looked normal because the whole fire is on the second floor and above. So anyway, so I went inside, and there was a kid that had been burnt like beyond recognition. And
Oh my God.
so I think the firefighter like knew there's nothing that we could do, but like just needed to confirm that and make that, and have somebody else make that decision. And so I was like,
And
yeah,
the
there's
kid was
nothing
already
we
dead at that point, was it?
Oh, the kid had no ears and no nose, and was charred and
jeez.
completely, had really no fingers left. I mean, it was burnt so badly that, yeah, there was nothing left. So, I said, you have to leave this inside, and because you can't bring it out, because there's bystanders, and the mom was out there just screaming, just like screaming and screaming and screaming, and so I went back out. And then like one kid after another was brought out by the fire department. And so like a firefighter comes running out, and he hands me a 2-year-old that's like limp and is burned, and skin hanging off of him, and hands him to me. And so I run and lay him down in the back of my ambulance, and I'm starting like the priority for anybody who's been burned like this is to get an airway. You have to get an airway because the throat will swell and the lungs will swell, and you won't be able to, and then they won't have an airway. So you have to get an airway as fast as possible. So I was about just getting ready, working on doing that. And then like out comes another firefighter with another kid, like the same thing, even a younger kid. So I get that kid. So now I got 2 kids on my gurney, and I'm the only paramedic. I have an EMT partner who can do minimal stuff, but and then another kid comes out of this house. And so I have 3 not breathing, limp, burned kids on my gurney. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff they don't teach you, in paramedic school. Like, I mean, they teach us to triage and, and that kind of thing. But it's like, okay, like, who do you work on first? Who do you take care of first? And
yeah.
I was fortunate enough that another ambulance got on scene, and so I just like, it was almost like a football, like, here, take this kid and go. And so I started working on the remaining kids, and then finally another ambulance pulled up, and I was able to hand that kid off. And I mean, we could have taken off to the hospital with the 2 kids right away, but everything, I mean, it happened so fast that I was fortunate enough to have be able to have each kid have a paramedic to be taking care of them. So yeah, that was a tough one. That was a really tough one.
What happened to the kids though? At the end of the day, they get to the hospital? Did they survive?
So they all got to the hospital, and they ended up getting. It was kind of a big deal in the community because the city's not very big, And so they all got like stabilized in the emergency room, and then they all were flown to Children's Hospital in Oakland so they could be, taken care of at a much better facility.
Yeah.
And so I believe they all lived. I'm not exactly sure if they all lived. Like one of them was burned like really bad, and so
Wow.
but yeah, and that's kind of the thing where you're like, I don't know if I saved a life. I mean, we gave them. I do know that we all gave them the very best chance that they could have. Like
Yeah.
like, and that's where you kind of walk away. Like the call went really well. Like we did a good job. Like we didn't mess up,
Yeah. You did everything you
and
could.
we did everything we could. So
And
so yeah.
and and what I mean, how do you, like you say, you're not taught, as paramedics to handle that case necessarily, but even the aftermath, like, that once your job was done and you sort of, said, okay, great, they're in the hospital, like, then what happens? Do you kind of just shut it
You
off,
go get
go to the
lunch.
next job? You get lunch.
Yeah, you go get lunch. I mean, really, like, because in order to do the job, like, that's what you have to be able to do. And
Yeah.
I just, I mean, really, like, I kind of liken it to, like, okay, I have a box on my head, and you go on a horrible call like that, and you just put it in the box, and you close the lid, and you go get lunch, and then you
Yeah.
just go on to the next call, and you don't really, think about it. And you say to yourself, like, oh, wow, that sucked. But, you move on from it. And that's really what I did my whole entire career, and just kind of go on a bad call and put it in the box, and every once in a while something would affect you, but like for me, I thought it wasn't affecting me at all. I thought, I was just
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, this is what I do, and this is where I'm comfortable, and like bring on another one, like like let's go to the next one, let's go to the next one, let's go to the next one, and and then. And then, 25 years later, I had a fire, and we got dispatched to a fire. It was in the middle of the night, and first engine and the first truck go in, and they knock the fire down, and they say they do a primary search, like that's when you do a quick search to see if there's any victims inside, and they say there's no victim. We didn't find anybody. The primary search is clear. And to kind of make a long story short, so then me and my crew were sent in to do a secondary search and do some other work in there, because then we have to kind of clean up after the fire, make sure the fire hasn't gotten into the walls or gotten into the attic, and because fire has a funny way of doing that, and then it can just go throughout the whole house, or like this was an apartment, this was a
Yeah.
penthouse in an apartment building, and so so you have to do a lot of work after the fire to make sure that the fire is like completely out. So anyway, so we'd been sent up there. We kind of did our search, didn't find anything, and then the way the apartment was set up, like the penthouse. So if you walk through the front door, you enter into a hallway, and if you look to your left, there's like you head to the living room, which is a pretty big living room, and if you look to the right, there's some bedrooms, a bathroom, and then the kitchen. And everything on the left was completely charred, like that's where the fire was, and like there was nothing left. It had flash. There was absolutely like nothing left. Like there was the coils, and a mattress that was in that
Oh, yeah.
room. That's pretty much all that was left in that room. Everything had been consumed by the fire. And then if you look to your right, it was clean. There's
Yeah.
like smoke damage and soot and that kind of stuff, but the fire had not gotten over there. So anyway, so we did a quick search, didn't find anything, and then I was on the charge side of the room, like trying to, because that was my job. Like, okay, how do we want to tackle this in
Yeah.
terms of
And
making
the
sure all the
fire's
fire's
completely
out.
out by this point, is it?
Fire's completely out. Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
fire at
Yeah.
all, and it's clear. All the smoke is gone. We've blown all the smoke out, and it's completely clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, so anyway, so I was in this room, and I turned my head, and I was looking down the hallway. And sure as shit, I see two firefighters carrying a person, and it gets me right now. And I was overwhelmed with like, I just screwed up like so bad, because we were sent in to look for this guy, and we didn't find him. And he was limp, and he was ashen, and he was obviously dead. But they hustled him out and down the stairs, and into the ambulance, and he ended up dying. But it was like that moment that I just feel like I made like the biggest mistake of my entire career. And it was after that fire, and nobody said anything. Like nobody said like, oh, you blew it. It's like not finding victims in fires like happens all the time just because of
Yeah, I was about to ask
debris.
you. Yeah.
And like there's people like you'll like a lot of times like bodies are found in fire like way after the fire's out, like
Yeah.
during cleanup and mop up, and firefighters will report like stepping over a body while they're looking for it. It just is so difficult to do. But in my case, I felt like I should have found this guy because the room was clean, there was no fire burning. um but I mean, like looking back, it was obvious that this guy was already dead. There's nothing anybody could have done. Even the first in crew, if they found him, I don't think he would have had a chance of surviving.
Yeah, so you weren't even
So
the
any,
first crew to go and looking for them. You
no,
were, yeah. So
as a second. So yeah,
wow.
and the guys that found him, they were pulling ceiling. So we'll pull the ceiling down to like, and that's one of the ways we look for fire extension into the attic. And so they were
And they found
pulling
it by
the
accident,
ceiling,
basically.
and they found it by accident, and they were
Oh
looking, and
man.
they're like, that something under the table looks like doesn't look right. And so they went and
Yeah.
investigated, and they found it as a body. So it was like in that moment, like there really like flipped a switch for me. And the way I kind of like describe it is like, I put all these bad calls in a box, and I went to put this guy in that box, and there was no more room. Like that box had been full. And so
Right.
it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And like it kind of like box pressurized and blew up all over everything. And then that was after that. Like I didn't notice anything for a little bit, but my wife talks about how like I wouldn't stop talking about that call. Like it was constantly there for me. Like, and that's really where I started the struggle.
Yeah.
And I think it like all those bad calls that I've been storing, and I shoved away some part of my brain, all just came flooding out. And then in the next few ensuing months, that's when my symptoms of my PTSD started. Like I started having nightmares, waking up screaming from calls, like work calls, dreams. I stopped sleeping. Like I would sleep very, very little. I started having that, like I said, those intrusive thoughts, that videotape of calls that I hadn't thought about in years, in like 20 years, would just play in my head constantly. It's kind of like being locked in a movie theater and they turn the volume up and the brightness up, and you can't close your eyes and you can't plug your ears, and you have to just sit there and hear it all the time.
And you just come to you any time of the day. You just mind
All
your
the
own
time,
business.
yeah. It's just kind of, yeah, just go, yeah. And there's no way, I didn't know how to shut them off. I was angry, I was super angry, very irritable, like had a really short fuse, was blowing up at people, like super
Mm.
irrational. Started crying. Like I never cry, like only when I'd get really, really angry, but I'd start like we have a really kind of innocuous call at work, and I'd start crying.
Well,
So I started having these symptoms, and I felt so much shame about it. Like I didn't want anybody to know. And so I'm like, okay, I need to go see a therapist and like figure this out so I can just be done with it and get back to
yeah.
work. And that's when the therapist told me like, oh, you have PTSD. And at first I was like, yeah, no, I don't. And part of that comes from like feeling like I have to be like the strongest one in the room. And I mean, part of
Yeah.
that's being a woman and never wanting to ever show any weakness. And then a lot of it's just kind of was my nature of never, ever wanting to show any weakness, and wanting people to know that they can depend on me and then they can count on me. And like, oh my God, nobody can know that I'm crying or feeling horrible. And so, like I said, I fought it for a little bit, the fact that I had PTSD. And then finally I'm like, okay, fine. I have PTSD, but let's just fix this so I can get back to work and get on with my life. And my therapist is like, yeah, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it got really bad, and a lot of it was because of the shame that I felt and not wanting to ask for help. Like, first responders, like we are the help, and so we don't ask for help. at all. And, a lot of that comes from our childhood too. Like we never asked for help when we were kids. We had to solve all these problems by ourselves.
Yeah.
And that becomes like the kind of comfortable, safe place for us. So we don't ask for help. So, even though I've seen a therapist, like that was asking for help, but it was also like, no, I'm paying you and like teach me some tricks or whatever, so I can, get on with this. And it wasn't really asking for help. And, I didn't tell anybody about it. Except for obviously my wife, but these symptoms just continued to just get worse and worse and worse. And, my therapist is saying like, you need to take some time off work. And, I fought that for a long time. And I finally took some time off work, and, it was a couple of weeks, and I was feeling a little bit better, and I'm like, all right, yeah, I got this. And so I went back to work. And then I started on the way home from work. I get off, work a 48-hour shift. I get off in the morning, and then I start like get in my car, pull out of the driveway, and I just start sobbing, like just out of nowhere. Like I had no control over it. Wasn't thinking about anything. I just start sobbing, and I'd cry all the way home. And then, so the way our schedule works, we work 2 days on, 4 days off. And so as the 4 days went on, I'd start to feel a little bit better. And I'm like, okay, I got this. I go back to work. Because, I always, at that point in time, I always thought the very worst thing that could ever happen to me was to not be able to handle my job or do my job. And, so the shame was just extraordinary. And then, I worked a shift. I had to pay back some trades. And so I worked a little extra. I worked like almost 4 days in a row. And when I got off that morning, I was like, I'm not going to cry. Like, I'm going to keep my shit together and, not cry on the way home. And so I did. So I made it all the way home, and I was like, yeah, I got this. I sent my wife a text, and I said, I didn't cry on the way home. Like, I'm good. And I didn't get a response. And I was going to go play tennis and meet a friend. And so, I changed my clothes, and I got in my car, and I started driving across town. And I wasn't like trying to like keep my composure or anything like that. And that's when the whole world came crumbling down on me.
What?
I was started sobbing, so overwhelmed. I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's like the pain is just like extraordinarily. It's just like your body feels horrible, your brain feels horrible. You just like, and I didn't know that there was any other answer out there, and the only thing I could think to do to end it was to drive into a tree and kill myself.
Oh my God.
So I became very suicidal at that moment. So I first started looking for a pole to drive into, and then I'm like, well, poles are made to be hit and knocked over. So like I got to start looking for a tree. And so, and I was even thinking like even if I, am severely injured and not, put in a coma or whatever, like that'll work too, because that way I won't have to go back to work, and I won't have to tell anybody why. Like it was an out. It was like the only way I could think of to get out of the hole that I was in.
Whoa.
So I started looking for a tree, and then I started thinking, well, if you do this, like the first responders that go on you, like you're just going to be adding another, bad call into their box. And where I live, I know a lot of the firefighters, and so so I was just like you can't do this. Like, just get yourself to this tennis courts. Like, just get yourself. And so I just did everything I could to get myself, because I knew once I got there, I'm around people, then I'm not going to do anything crazy. And I sent my wife a text, and I said, no matter how much I beg and plead after my 4 day saying that I'm fine, I go, you can't let me go back to work.
Yeah.
And she sent me a text back, said, yeah, I already decided that. And sorry, I'm a little emotional. So anyway, so that was, I made it to the tennis courts, and that was a moment where I'm like, okay, I actually need to get help. And so, I called into work, and I said, like, I have to go off. Like, I can't. I just called and said I need some time off, and put me off. Start burning, like, basically put me off on sick leave.
Yeah.
And so we have something called workers' comp, which is, like if it's insurance, like if you get injured at work or whatever. And so the battalion chief that I spoke with, and he said, is it, like, what is this for? Like, can I ask? And I was super hesitant because I just didn't want anybody to know, what
Just
was
don't tell
wrong with
anyone.
me.
Yeah.
And then I remembered this battalion chief's sister was a paramedic back in the day, and she had actually killed herself from PTSD.
Oh my God.
So I was like, okay, well, this guy will understand, so I can tell
Yeah.
him. And so I told him, and he's like, okay. And so he told me, like, how to go off. Like, I had no idea how to go off on workers' comp or anything. And so anyway, so that's really where my journey began. And so I went off work. I had every intention of going back. And so I started, I was still going to therapy, and then I started going to another therapist who does a treatment called EMDR, which is a way of reprogramming your brain,
Mhm.
working on these calls that I call it like they were haunting me. And so I started seeing her, and I just wasn't getting any better. I was just like getting like the anger was worse, the sleeping was worse, the nightmares were worse, and even though I was off of work, I was circling the drain and spiraling. And then somebody told me about this retreat. It's called the West Coast Post Trauma Retreat, and it's a 6-day retreat for first responders with PTSD. And at first I was like, yeah, I don't need that. Like, I don't need some residential program. Like, that's not me. Like, I'm not crazy. And then things were just getting so bad, I was finally like, all right, I'll call them. And I called them, and I ended up going, and that was where my recovery started. And it was 100% because I spent time with my peers who were going through the same thing. So the way it works, there's 6 of us, or 6 clients, that were there to be treated. And then there were like 15 peers, and they're all cops and firefighters and paramedics, dispatchers, who had PTSD and had gone through the program, and they were just there like to support us for the week. And then there are 2 clinicians and a chaplain. And it's basically like 6 months of therapy compressed into those 6 days. And you basically you share all your secrets with your peers, and then you find out that they're all been struggling with the same thing. And, here
Yeah.
I thought, like, I was like, we have 125 uniformed personnel at my department, and I'm the only one that's going through this. So there is something so wrong with me.
Yeah.
And then I go to this retreat, and I find out it's like, nope, like so many of us are struggling. And being able to share your secrets and the things that I felt shame over, and with my peers, just like changed everything for me. And then like therapy started working, and the EMDR started working, and I still had some moments where I really struggled, but it's been 10 years and I still have moments where I struggle, but like it's like I know I can manage everything now. And
Yeah.
that was really like what changed everything for me.
Wow. That's incredible. And how many, that's the thing you're saying. You had 125 uniform personnel in your department, and you thought the only one. Realistically, do you think each one of them to some degree is experiencing
Absolutely.
it?
So I went back to my department, and there was another guy that for my department. I got a phone call from him one night, and he won't care if I use his name. I go, hey Mark, like, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, I'm not doing so well. He's like, can you tell me a little bit about your experience? And so I told him, and he's like, yeah. He goes, I have that too. He goes, I carry a bullet
Wow.
around with me everywhere I go
Oh my God.
in case I need it, for himself. And so he ended up having to leave because of PTSD. And so he and I went back to our department and like shared our stories, because I hadn't talked to really anybody, because I didn't want anybody to know, I was full of so much shame. And so yeah, I just that morning I just left and nobody knew what happened.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so we shared our stories, and after that, like, my phone was ringing with people who are struggling. And it's amazing because that retreat that I go to, like, I know there's so many people from my department that have gone to it. And now they have we finally have a peer counseling program, and, ways for people to get help, while they're still working, so it doesn't turn into full blown PTSD. And But yeah, I was not by any means the only person struggling. Like there are a lot of people like really, really hurting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talking about the way that it comes on sometimes, kind of, because I did a documentary a couple of years ago about death and grief and that kind of stuff, and someone described to me, that the feeling of grief is like, you have a box, and inside the box is a button, and the other thing inside the box is a ball that's constantly bouncing around, and every once in a while it'll just hit the button. And when the grief is really fresh, that box is really small, and the thing is constantly hitting the button. But like
Wow.
time goes on and you heal, the box becomes much bigger, and you still have the button and the ball's still bouncing around, but it doesn't hit the button so often,
That's brilliant. I've never heard that before. That's like super brilliant.
Is it similar to that?
I mean, that the whole grief component is huge too, and that's oh my God, that's the most brilliant thing I've heard. So I would say similar to that. It's very similar to that. The button isn't as sensitive, but it doesn't, like, I don't get triggered almost hardly at all anymore. Like very little triggers me. Every once in a while, like a sound will catch me off guard, and it'll like just kind of like a snap. It'll just my nervous system will just like poof, but then it's like it's gone. It's like
a spike.
Yeah, it's like a spike, and then it goes away. It doesn't like continue to ramp up, and I don't have to like work on, trying to de-escalate it or anything like that. Like it just kind of happens, and that's just through practice and working on it and doing all the work and healing, and it doesn't ramp up like it used to.
I guess the sort of big picture question is that, given, your experience at PTSD and the job and the fact that you love this job and you couldn't imagine doing anything else, like given the fact that you knew that PTSD was a risk with this job, going back and doing it all again, would you still do it, as you have?
I would. I absolutely would. It was a best job for me. Like I can't imagine doing anything else. I can't, I miss it so much. Like I really, really miss it. Yeah, I would absolutely. It's funny though, with some of the physical things that I'm starting to struggle with now, like my back and my shoulder, and like that has almost been worse than the PTSD in terms of like what I do it all over again. But I without question, absolutely without question.
I mean, for anyone listening, obviously listen to this episode and the experiences, and anyone interested in being a first responder, I think probably these days might have an awareness of PTSD, but anyone listening to this and going, I would love to be a first responder, but I am, afraid, or I'm scared of the risks or whatever, like what kind of message would you give to them and, about doing this job?
Again, I'd tell them it's the best job in the world, if you know what I mean, if that's the kind of thing that they like to do. And it's really different now. At the time I had no idea what I was getting into, and I think no matter how much you tell somebody about the job, they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. I think it's like, I mean, I'm not a parent, but you hear parents say this, like they had no idea what they were getting themselves into, even though they might have read every book and heard every story. You don't really know until you're in it. But things have changed a lot. Like the culture has changed a lot. Like when I was a young firefighter and a young paramedic, the culture was, we don't talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Like you just don't talk about it. Like it was like the suck it up buttercup, and it was all about being strong and withstanding everything and never asking for help and never just saying, hey, I need a break. Like never. Like you push yourself to the end, and that's really changed. The culture has really changed. Like fortunately, like there are things in place now to take way better care of us. When there's a bad call, like it's all hands on deck now to deal with it, to talk about it and get people the help that they need, so it doesn't like plant itself in your brain somewhere and like wear on your nervous system, without you even knowing about it until it blows up. And so I think things are a lot better.
That's I love that analogy that you had of like, 50, 70 years ago, the equipment, just the physical safety equipment you had was less advanced than what you had in your day and what they have, now. And it's the
Yeah.
same with mental health, this sort of awareness and the approach, the technology, the science is always advancing. And as it advances, the risks become less to the firefighter, the first responder, whoever it might be.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Wow. I mean, just kind of getting into these sort of final thoughts, part of the conversation. I mean, for someone who does a job like you, and I'm sure you've spoken to many of your colleagues about this. I mean, does it? I'm always curious. I haven't. I once thought about maybe when I was in a sort of career transition phase when I was in my early 20s. I thought, being a firefighter would be really cool, kind of thing. I never went down that road, but I wonder how it changes the way that you see the world. Does it change the way that you see the world?
It does.
In life, and how does it change it?
It really, really does. I've learned how fragile life is, how, like things can just change in an instant. Like how many calls I've been on where, somebody just like ran out to go to the store to get some milk and didn't come home because they were, hit by another car and they were killed. And just like how fast life can change and how precious life is. And then also like the whole other side of humanity that's just ugly and just, like the poor and, like how they actually live. Like, you hear, news stories and it's like, yeah, but until you've been in these people's houses and, seen like what they live in and what kids grow up in, that's like, yeah, they have no chance, really of making it just because of what they grew up in.
Yeah.
And you also learn there's a lot of great things in the world. There's a lot of really strong, like tough people out there, and there's a lot of really good people out there. And so yeah, you just see a whole other part of the world. I really feel like first responders should be part of decision making on like how to tackle the homeless problem or violence or anything, because like we have our hands in it every single day, and like we really see what's going on, and the politicians don't. They have no idea. They've never been in these people's houses. They've never been on the streets at 2:00 in the morning with a homeless people or a homeless person. You know what I mean? They've never been there, and they don't know.
It's like you guys see raw humanity without a filter. Basically, you see the absolute best and the absolute worst at the same time. Sometimes I can't even imagine.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Wow, amazing. And I guess sort of just wrapping things up, the end of all these shows, I love to just plug anything that you've got going on. So obviously, just let us know. You've got a podcast, you've got a book. Tell us what you've been up to and people can find you.
Well, I'm not on Facebook really, but I'm on Instagram. Christy E. Warren, and then also I have the Firefighter Deconstructed. I have a Substack. I really like writing. I write a lot about firefighting stuff, recovering from PTSD stuff, and then just other crap. So yeah, I still like to write. I have the podcast. I haven't done an episode in a while, but on the podcast called the Firefighter Deconstructed, I interview basically first responders who have gone through PTSD or whatever, and kind of like just telling their story and their journey, and kind of like almost just kind of like what we just did right here, and and so yeah, nice. And there's a book, and
tell us about the book.
Yeah, so it's called Flashpoint. You can get it anywhere books are sold. It's basically like my story. Get my career, getting PTSD, getting better, and a lot about what we talked about today, but just kind of like even in a little bit further depth, and a lot more, like a lot more calls that I've been on are in it. Just a little bit more in depth about my journey.
And like I said at the top, it is really, it's really well written, and you've really transported, because I was kind of reading through it, and then I just felt like, just one more chapter. It's really sort of very, you get really engrossed really quickly. So yeah, congrats again on that.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Thank you.
Christy, thank you. I mean, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, and really, I hope it's helpful to people, and it can sort of enlighten a little bit more behind the scenes of, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly of being a first responder and a firefighter and a paramedic. So, thank you so much again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Chris. It was a real honor to be on your show. Thank you.
No worries. Great. We'll speak to you soon.
Awesome.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode. A huge thanks to Christy for being so open and sharing her incredible journey. And of course, a big thanks to you all for listening as well. If today's episode touched on difficult experiences you're dealing with, or if you're struggling with PTSD or your own mental health, please do not go through it alone. In the US, you can dial or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline to talk to someone right away. If you're elsewhere in the world, please check local hotlines and services in your area, because reaching out can make all the difference. If you'd like to dive deeper into Christy's stories, you can check out her episode page at noordinarymonday.com. There you will find links and more info about the story. You'll also find extras across our socials. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and more. Now, you won't want to miss next week's episode. My guest is Terry Rich, a serial CEO and innovator who not only helped crack one of America's biggest lottery scams, but once saved a struggling zoo with some of the strangest ideas you'll ever hear. From late night concerts with beer to selling lion and tiger poop as deer repellent. It's a wild mix of business savvy, bold creativity, and scandalous true crime. Subscribe now so you don't miss out on that. If you've got a career story that you think would be great on the show, we would love to hear from you. You can get in touch via our socials. You can email hello, HELLO, at noordinarymonday.com, or you can use the Submit Your Story page on our website. And if you enjoyed this episode and want to help us continue the show, please do 2 really quick and easy things for us. Leave a 5-star rating and review, and tell a family member or friend. That's it, really easy. This show is produced, hosted, and edited by me, Chris Barron. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great Monday, everyone.